I think one of the biggest things that's running through my mind is how do I convince this room that yesterday, not tomorrow, they need to either start a video show or a podcast that they can then record, and then after it's done for an hour, do what I do, which is post-produce it and chop it up into little pieces, which then gets them into a place of being able to make 17 or 20 pieces of content out of a 1 hour day. Now, what do you make your podcast? As you guys can imagine, no normal human being thinks mortgage life is rad. We can agree with that. It's not the littiest thing in society. But what I do believe is the following. I do believe that every one of you has the ability to start a podcast that is a small business or community show based on where you live. The St. Louis Business Podcast is a real podcast that anybody here could start. And let me break this down to you why I want to encourage so many of you to start a podcast. I call it the high school party rule. I want to take you back to high school. Now think about sophomore, junior, senior year, and think very carefully about that one kid who wasn't the most popular kid in school, but had the great fortune that his parents weren't around on weekends. That kid, as a mid-level popular kid, had the great idea of being the person that threw the party so the popular kids could come and hook up and drink. That kid's popularity exploded over the next year or two. The person that hosts the party has the leverage. If you start the St. Louis Business Podcast show and then you spend 5 hours DMing, emailing, and reaching out to all the other business owners in St. Louis and inviting them to be on your podcast named the St. Louis Business Podcast, you, by just taking the initiative, have flipped the leverage and now will have much bigger business owners than you interested in being on your podcast. Through that, you will build general awareness in your region and you will build reputation as a top of the funnel lead gen to what you actually do. The show is about the entrepreneurial or local dynamics. The awareness you get from it will allow them to figure out what you do for a living, which will lead to biz dev. I believe what I just said is as important as knowing how to balance your checkbook. I believe that in 2020, the ability to be a media company or a content creator for your business is as required as paying your taxes